Welcome to the Naturally Healthy Pets podcast. Let's get to it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Dr. Judy Morgan, your host for the Naturally Healthy Pets podcast. My guest today is another brilliant veterinarian. I don't know where we find all these brilliant people to talk to on this show, but I guess we're just really lucky. So my guest is Dr. Terry Fossum, and she is a highly respected board-certified veterinary surgeon, widely recognized and admired within the veterinary community. She is best known for authoring the best-selling textbook, Small Animal Surgery. I'm pretty sure it's on my bookshelf, a foundational resource in veterinary education and practice worldwide. In addition to her contributions to academia, Dr. Fossum owns and operates a natural pet wellness company, offering products designed as a first line of defense against common ailments, supporting pets' health through science-backed, nature-powered solutions. Terry, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Judy. It's really an honor.
So I'm sorry to everyone who's listening, but she's suffering with allergies and I've got a head cold. So between the two of us, we're very sniffly today. It just makes it more fun. So we want to talk today about something that I think is a really cool topic because I just read a book on this. And the title of the show is Are Dogs a Better Predictive Model for Drug Approval? Now, interestingly, I got this book at the library called The First Cell, and it was written by an oncologist, she's from Pakistan. She's got a huge practice in New York City, and she specializes in bone marrow and blood cancers, and has been doing research, has this huge bank of samples that she's been collecting for 30 years. And she talked in that book about how all cancer research and drug research is done using a mouse model. And interestingly, mice are nothing like us. And so it's a really bad model. So for instance, we have a lot in our white blood cell distribution. We have mostly neutrophils and some lymphocytes. It's about a 2-to-1, 2.5-to-1 ratio. Mice are the opposite. They're like all lymphocytes and some neutrophils. So the lymphocytes are really responsible for the immune system and how it works. So they're going to respond a lot differently to drug models than we would.
Oh, yeah.
Correct?
Well, and take that one step further and figure that when we test, like, say, a tumor in a mouse, we usually use immunosuppressed mouse that we put a human tumor in so that they'll accept the tumor and then we treat it. It's not a real world setting. So I think this is a great topic. It is one I have been passionate about for 30 years because I think drug development in this country is absolutely not sustainable the way that we do it. You know, our healthcare in the U.S. in 2027 is going to be, I think, 19.7% of our GDP.
Wow.
We're almost at 20%. I mean, how can we sustain that? I don't think we can. And so we have to figure out how to be more efficient at drug discovery, and we have to figure out how to make it cheaper. So, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk to, and I'm going to give you some numbers here, so I'm put on some glasses, but here are just some numbers why people need to understand why this is such an important topic. If you look at 2022, what drug development costs were in the U.S. in billions of dollars, it was $100.8 billion that we spent. In 2022, on prescription drugs globally, we spent $1.3 trillion. And that's gone up about 4 to 6% a year. But it gets even worse. If you talk about cancer drugs, globally, we spend about $150 billion, but has increased over 10% a year for each of the past 5 years. So the numbers are just absolutely incredible. And Medicare spending is in 2018, it was 107 billion. By 2028, it is going to be 223 billion.
Mm.
Not knowing what's going to happen maybe between with the new administration. There are
Right.
going to be some changes.
That's what I was going to say.
Know.
That is part of the problem. I mean, if we would clean up our food supply and stop promoting chronic inflammation, chronic disease. I mean, it's in our pets, in ourselves. We just know one of my huge things for our animals is we're feeding them pesticides purposely. Flea and tick pesticides, they're neurotoxins. Yeah, no problem there. We're making no inroads on cancer. It takes 7 to 9 years to get a drug to market and millions or billions of dollars to get a drug to market. And then some of the drugs, they make it to market and then the side effects are so horrendous that they get dumped very quickly. So we need a different model.
we absolutely do. So let's talk about that. 50% of our healthcare dollars go to 5% of our population. That's chronic disease for you right there. Yeah. And if we don't get a handle on chronic disease, to your point, which is largely inflammation, that number is just going to go up and up and up. And again, I just don't think that's affordable. So if it's that expensive, we'll talk more about the expense of getting a drug to market and the time. Why does Big Pharma do it? Let's look at some numbers.
Because they're making billions and billions.
Billions. Okay. So here's some numbers. In 2021, worldwide subscription sales of both prescription and over-the-counter drugs in billions of dollars in 2021, and oncology was 176 billion. In 2026, it's going to estimate to be 320.6 billion, right? And almost every category is going up in somewhat similar, except for, guess what? Vaccines. Vaccines are going to go down over the next few years.
That would be nice.
Yep.
That would be really nice.
Are definitely going down. But I mean, on the other hand, if you look at once you start a phase 1 trial for a human drug, if you look at your odds of actually getting approved, if you're an oncology drug, it's 3.4%.
Wow.
Yeah. So what people don't understand is that, hey, Big Pharma is not eating those costs. Every drug that they try to get through the pathway that doesn't make it is something we pay for, right?
Sure.
I mean, they're not going to pay for it. So if you look, the difficulty is that there's no set requirement for reporting of what drug companies spend on R&D. But if you look at through pre-launch, so research and development to get a new molecular entity to the market, you're somewhere between, at the low end, 161 million, and at the high end, 4.5 billion.
Wow.
Dollars. and you're absolutely right. It's 12 to 14 years to do that. Wow. So, we don't know the exact numbers because companies don't all report the same numbers. Some don't report their preclinical. They only start once they enter into phase 1. Others report everything. Therapeutic class obviously makes a big difference. So there's just a lot of issues. So these are estimates that we have, but however you look at it, the numbers are just incredibly high. So here's a bit more. If you look at drug discovery and the timeline, so let's say that you have this big funnel and you start with 10,000 compounds. So that's your drug discovery, and that's generally going to take you 3 to 5 years. And then you're going to get down to, from that 10,000 compounds, you're going to weed it down to maybe 250. Those 250 compounds are ones that you're going to look at preclinically. You're going to do some more testing, and then you're going to get into your clinical development. So that's another 5 to 7 years. You're going to test in phase 1 safety, phase 2 safety and efficacy, phase 3 you're going to do a large scale efficacy study, and then in phase 4 you're going to do long-term safety. So that's going to take you another, 2 to 3 years at the very least. So yeah, you're talking 12 to 14 years, starting with 10,000 compounds and coming down to a single one that will actually make it through the approval process.
So if you're a pharmaceutical cancer researcher, you literally spend your entire life trying to come up with that one compound that is going to be effective. And you may spend your entire life and never come up with that compound that's going to be effective.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
So, I guess, what do we do when, we're at this point where it's really, if you're so as you mentioned, I have a small company. We can talk more about this in a second, but I have a drug that I actually think could have really interesting implications for cancer in dogs. But I have 8 to 12 million to take a drug through even the CVM FDA. And that's a lot of money to raise. So there are a lot of very promising compounds that never get brought to market. So first off, so why is it so expensive? Well, part of it is that, I think that there's planned obsolescence of a lot of drugs these days. Pharmaceutical companies definitely plan on these drugs lasting through their patent life, and then they've got to have their next drug ready to go. We're treating, particularly in dogs, and you know this, Judy, as much as I do, we're treating a lot more serious diseases, a lot more dogs with cancer, a lot more people that really want to go to the furthest extent that we can possibly go, which is, almost at the same level of human care at this point.
Sure.
For cancer, and that's costly. Development costs a lot. I don't think we can discount how good a lobbying pharmaceutical companies do. I think they are the biggest and best paid lobbyists that we see in Washington, D.C. And
absolutely. They also are the biggest contributors to media advertising. And so they pretty much own the media as well. We need to take a break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back to continue this fascinating conversation. Stay tuned.
Are you interested in even more helpful content from Dr. Judy? Check out Dr. Judy's private Patreon community to receive exclusive perks such as live Q&A opportunities with Dr. Judy herself, exclusive recipes, merchandise, discounts, guest interviews, educational presentations, Black Friday and Cyber Monday early access, and more. Be in the know and help Dr. Judy as she continues her mission to empower and educate pet parents like you, so you can advocate for a happier, healthier life for your pet. Go to patreon.com/Dr. Judy Morgan to sign up now. Could your pet benefit from PEA? Palmitoyl ethanolamide, also known as PEA, is a naturally occurring fatty acid compound found in plants and animals. PEA may help support healthy inflammatory and immune balance, comfort, and well-being. We found it helpful for cats, dogs, and equines. Podcast listeners can take advantage of 15% off of any size of Dr. Judy's PEA with the code PODCAST64. Get your Dr. Judy's PEA today at naturallyhealthypets.com and 15% off using the code PODCAST64.
Welcome back. You're listening to Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets, and today I'm talking with Dr. Terry Fossum, and we're talking about how dogs may be a better predictive model for drug approval, and tons of facts and figures. So why our dogs a better predictive model? I mean, we already talked about some of the fallacies with mice. I mean, they're specially bred. We're not using anything natural here. We're using very specially bred mice. They're injected with these tumors. They grow the tumor, and then we give them a drug and see if it kills it. And sometimes it works great in the mice, and then you try it on a person and nothing.
And most of the time it doesn't work. Most of the time, right? So to your point, you mentioned earlier, most studies are done on mice. It's actually 95% of the early preclinical work is done in mice. And I'm going to give you an example of why that doesn't work in part. So I'm studying a botanical that has some very interesting characteristics. At one dose, it is toxic, and at another dose, it is a medicine with really interesting properties. I don't know if you've looked much at, but we're talking about sort of longevity and stuff and chronic aging. And a lot of people these days believe that chronic aging is associated with a buildup of senescent cells. Mm-hmm. So senescent cells, for those of you who aren't looking in the longevity literature, cells are not meant to divide forever, because when they get old, they start making mistakes. So they're supposed to divide, a certain number of times, and then they're supposed to go down this programmed cell death pathway. Well, we have a certain number of cells in our body that say, nope, ain't happening. I am not dying. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to quit dividing. So now you've got this non-dividing cell that secretes very inflammatory substances. And that's why most people think that we age. And the drug, this natural botanical that I'm now studying, is the most potent senolytic that has ever been identified. So it should be interesting for anti-aging, but even maybe more importantly, there's some recent evidence that those senescent cells might be what cause metastases. So for example, Judy, you take a dog with osteosarcoma and you amputate the leg, we give them chemotherapy, but we know that within 3 months to a year, they're all going to die of mets, right?
Right.
Those, I think, and there's getting to be some increasing evidence and literature to support this, I think those are those senescent cells that reanimate that we didn't kill with the chemotherapeutic. In fact, we give chemotherapeutics, we drive cells to senescence. Those are the cells that are becoming our mets. And guess what? So we know that this particular botanical that I'm looking at, on the sodium potassium ATPase pump, the normal isomer that's expressed is the alpha 1. But this botanical actually binds to the alpha 3. So stress cells, senescent cells, some cancer cells overexpress this alpha 3 isomer. And that's where this botanical binds. But guess what? Mice and rats don't express that isomer. And yet the studying was done in mice and rats. They're totally immune to the effects at any level. And in our studies, we found out that chickens are too. So, what a waste, but yet, but there's still a desire to do these early preclinical studies in mice, a total waste of money and time. So, yeah. So why? Let's talk about dogs. And one thing I want to make really clear is we are not talking about giving dogs disease. Right?
Okay.
We are talking about taking dogs that have naturally occurring disease and using them as a more predictive model for human disease. So that's for cancer, for osteoarthritis, for any seizures, for any number of diseases. One of the big ones is Alzheimer's. Dogs get canine cognitive dysfunction, which is Alzheimer's. Right. And it's essentially the same disease in people and dogs. But we can treat dogs a little more readily, and they don't live as long, so we're going to get data a lot faster. So we're talking dogs with naturally occurring disease that we have safety data on a product, and then we get efficacy in dogs, because that efficacy data is going to translate to efficacy in people much more commonly than going from mice. Mice to man doesn't work. Dog to man should be highly predictive. So we need to use naturally occurring animal disease.
Right. And I like that model. That brings me back to the Keto Pet Sanctuary, where they were going to shelters and getting dogs with cancers and then putting them on their ketogenic diet, giving them exercise, like doing everything that you're supposed to do to keep an animal healthy. And, they had a huge success rate with getting those dogs turned back around and getting the cancers to disappear. And so, and it didn't take 18 years. We can do things, and I love starting with dogs that are already in that natural state. I mean, nobody wants, this is one of the problems with laboratory studies. Keeping beagles and monkeys and rats and mice in lab settings and doing horrible things to them, and then having to sacrifice the animals to do the autopsy at the end. And I think I love the model of, look, we're taking dogs who naturally have this problem, and then using whatever the compound is to try to see what results we can get with that. So that's very cool. So do you have ongoing studies using this dog model?
I do, several actually. So the one that I have going right now, so the compound I was just speaking of, the senolytic, is from the oleander plant, which we all know is toxic. But again, we microdose it, and we have figured out very safe doses, which are 100 times lower than what you would ever see serious adverse event with. And we haven't seen any. We've dosed quite a few dogs. Interestingly enough, this oleander product, when we extracted it looked to me very much like Apoquil for anti-itch. So we did a head-to-head in cells with the extract, with the active ingredient, which is oleandrin, and then with Apoquil. And what we saw is that we actually reduced the inflammatory cytokines more than Apoquil did, but we don't suppress the immune system.
Which would be wonderful.
Which is amazing, because we all know, you can't give it to a dog with cancer. They're going to get worse. Some people are concerned it may actually cause cancers. I don't know if that's true, but definitely any veterinary oncologist that I have talked to, when they get a dog in that's on Apoquil that has neoplasia, they're off of Apoquil immediately. You can't give it to a dog less than a year of age. We've given ours to newborn puppies without any problem. So here's my dilemma, and it's kind of a sad one, I think, in that we're going to sell that product for anti-itch internationally, because I'm in talks with the FDA, but it's going to be difficult to get it approved here. And I don't want to go down the FDA drug approval pathway, because that will make the drug too expensive. And I want a drug that, Apoquil and the new one from Elanco, they're going to cost you $90 to $100 a month. A lot of people can't afford that. So our product is going to be about $45 a month, unless we go down the FDA pathway, and then we'd have to add on all those costs, and it would be too expensive. So we're not going to do that. And that is the reason, I think, there really are no supplements in veterinary medicine. It's not really a category, but they're unapproved drugs that the FDA just looks the other way. And we've got many, many of those. I mean, chondroitin is a good example. It's not an approved drug, but it's used in multiple products. I think there are something like 400 drugs that the National Animal Supplement Council has that are unapproved animal drugs, that again, the FDA doesn't mess with. So yeah, we'll see, but it's very interesting trying to take a drug and get it approved. That one does have some issues with toxicity at one level, but that I don't want to go through the FDA. So we're going to sell it internationally.
I don't blame you. So on your website, which is drfossums.com. Wait.
Dr. Fossum's Pet Care. Yeah.
drfossumspetcare.com. Thank you. You have some surveys. And what are those surveys about?
Yeah. So, what we found? So we have a product for canine cognitive dysfunction. It's a combination of Eastern and Western ingredients. And what we realized when we talked to people is that so many people thought the signs that their dogs were showing were just normal aging, but they're not. Like these dogs that go stand in a corner and they're confused, or the dogs that their sleep-wake cycle reverses and they're now awake all night and keeping their owners awake, or they stand at the hinge side of the door because they forget how a door opens. That's cognitive dysfunction. That is not normal aging. And so dogs, like I said, we treat them and we've seen about 38% improvement within 30 days. But the reason we put the surveys in there was so that people could do a baseline survey of where their dog is and then come back in 30 days or 60 days and reassess their dog and see if there's a change. And then we actually wrote a book recently. Let me grab one. It's for people with older dogs. So this is senior dogs maximizing time with your best friends. And we've got those same surveys. So if you're not, gone on our website, you can go into this book and it has the same surveys in it. But we've got them also for osteoarthritis, for dental disease, and for other diseases of
awesome.
Like cardiac disease. Again, just so that people can assess their dogs and follow them a little more closely.
Amazing. We are out of time. This was fascinating, and I applaud you for the research and the work that you're doing, making a difference in the lives of so many dogs around the world. And I wish you the best of luck with this. I'm sure you're going to be successful. So thank you very much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. And this went so fast. It was such a pleasure.
I know it does.
Thanks for listening to another great Naturally Healthy Pets episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for some helpful links. And if you enjoy the show, please be sure to follow and listen for free on your favorite podcast app. We value your feedback and would love to hear from you on how we're doing. Visit drjudymorgan.com for healthy product recommendations, comprehensive courses, upcoming events, and other fantastic resources. Until next time, keep giving your pet the vibrant life they deserve.
The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. It is no substitute for professional care by a veterinarian, licensed nutritionist, or other qualified professional. You're encouraged to do your own research and should not rely on this information as professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Dr. Judy and her guests express their own views, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets neither endorses or opposes any particular view discussed here.